Rudy Giuliani, along with his legal team, revealed why they believe this election was stolen from the president. 3 members of the Trump legal team come to Stinchfield tonight to lay out their case. The list of allegations are long and all backed up with sworn witness affidavits. No matter what the mainstream media tells you, these affidavits do amount to evidence. Here is a list of some of them that we will dig into deeper tonight. Republican monitors physically removing counters from rooms, removing those monitors from rooms. Can you believe it? Change dates on mail-in ballots. Democrats coaching voters on how to vote. That's one of the allegations witnesses swear happened. People voting twice. And maybe the most troubling, over 100,000 ballots trucked into Wisconsin counting rooms, all for Joe Biden and Joe Biden only. Also in Wisconsin, getting an absentee ballot requires an application, but that's not what happened.
There are 60,000 ballots in Milwaukee County and 40,000 ballots in Madison that, as far as we can tell, that don't have applications. If there's no application for an absentee ballot, the absentee ballot is thrown away. In other words, if you count the lawful votes, Trump won Wisconsin by a good margin.
That's the goal. Count the lawful votes. Now remember, they have sworn witness affidavits backing up these claims. Today, the Trump team also announced they believe what we here on Stinchfield have been warning about for the past 2 weeks. The possibility that Dominion voting systems had not just been compromised, as we feared, but the Trump legal team insists it was created for the very purpose of rigging an election. That system is used in 30 states, by the way. The president's lawyer, Sidney Powell, now says Dominion voting systems executives in Canada at the Home Office have all disappeared. We first told you earlier this week about Dominion voting employees. All their LinkedIn profiles were being deleted at an unbelievable rate. And now Powell claims Dominion voting shares office space with an entity funded by none other than George Soros.
The Dominion executives are nowhere to be found now. They are moving their offices overnight to different places. Their office in Toronto was shared with one of the Soros entities. There are ties of the Dominion leadership to the Clinton Foundation and to other known politicians in this country.
Now, this all stinks to high heaven. They specifically called into question the Dominion's Smartmatic voting software and its ties to, as she said, the Venezuelan government and dictators Chavez and Maduro using the system to rig the elections there and in Argentina. Now, these are all explosive allegations that, again, could flip this entire election on its head. Now, Dominion denies all of this, of course, though they've also denied my requests 4 times to interview them. They don't come forward. The media needs to start covering this, folks. It matters.
Trials take time. Putting on evidence takes time. This is basically an opening statement so the American people can understand what the networks have been hiding. That our objective is to make sure to preserve and protect election integrity. If every American is not on board with that, you have to ask yourself why. And if your fake news network is not covering this or allowing you to cover it fairly and accurately, you should ask yourself why.
They don't want to ask why because they don't want to cover it. That is, by the way, our first guest, Jenna Ellis, giving what I call an old-fashioned Texas smackdown to the media. She's a member of the president's legal team. Jenna Ellis, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much. And my dad's whole family's from Texas, so I appreciate that.
Well, there you go. That's where it comes from. I knew it had to be a reason for it, Jenna. So, hey,
my grandma's very proud of me right now.
Absolutely, and they should be. We all are, Jenna. I want to start right out of the bat, though. I want to play this clip. Speaking of the media, this is a reporter for Fox News.
Well, that was certainly a colorful news conference from Rudy Giuliani, but it was light on facts. So much of what he said was simply not true or has already been thrown out in court. And, Giuliani, he opened by making this really bold and baseless claim that a lot of this alleged nationwide voter fraud that he's referring to all came from one centralized place. He called it a nationwide conspiracy. And yet he failed to provide any hard evidence to back up that one specific claim, especially when you're dealing with a claim that really cuts to the core of our democratic process.
Jenna, I don't know what's going on with Fox News, but they just called Mayor Rudy Giuliani a liar. Your reaction?
Well, unfortunately for Kristen Fisher, she doesn't understand how the legal process works, and that was frankly embarrassing for her to say that, this has been thrown out of court, has been disproven. She doesn't understand the procedural nature versus a substantive evidentiary hearing, which we obviously have not yet had, and also saying that this has been disproven, this is just not true. Well, she is not sitting on any federal court that I'm aware of. She hasn't been looking at this. And so, that's just something that, again, the media really does need to take a look at this very seriously. And the one point that I do agree with her is that she said, this is alleging something very serious that's nationwide. Absolutely. And that's why the media really needs to take this seriously and actually allow the facts to be shown and cover this as responsible journalists.
All right, and it's important that it's covered. Look, Fox is off the rails. They don't believe an attorney presenting a case. An attorney, the likes of Rudy Giuliani, who's won a lot of cases, including taking down the mafia, fitting here in this case, by the way. All right, I want to start, Jenna, right to some of the facts that you laid out, some of the allegations you guys laid out. Let's start with the overvotes. How do some places and some counties have as many as 200% more voted than registered voters? What's going on here?
Yeah, well, obviously that can't happen when you only have registered voters that come in to vote, and then you have 200% of those registered votes. Obviously, that is overvoting, double duplicative ballots. And as the mayor said today in the press conference, in precincts even that have 80% turnout, that's considered overvoting, and you want to go back and carefully inspect that, because we know that not every eligible person who's registered actually turns up and votes in any given election. So we have all of these things that are not just irregularities, they just show that there's no way that you can have 200% of the registered voters turn out.
All right, so how do you get those votes thrown out? Is that part of the legal case here? What's the remedy? Do we have entire states the election gets thrown out? I think people are wondering, how do you get to the victory here?
Yeah, well, thankfully, our Constitution has provided and contemplated for the remedies when an election is irredeemably compromised, when it's corrupt, or when there's foreign influence. That's why I referred today to Federalist 68, where Alexander Hamilton specifically said that this is why we need to ratify the Constitution to include the Electoral College process. So when you have our element of direct democracy, which is that the people vote through their vote, the way that they are not disenfranchised if an election is corrupt, like what we are seeing here, is to have those constitutional remedies that are in place. The state legislatures are the only ones that can create election law. A huge part of this case as well is that election officials did not follow the law in their states. So clearly, this election did not go according to the law in these states. And so the remedy, of course, is that those ballots in those counties that were counted in secret, that were counted in any way illegally, need to be thrown out. And so that's all that we're asking for at this initial stage, is that states do not certify false or inaccurate election results, and that we can get to a constitutionally appropriate remedy that, of course, the court should look at, and also state legislatures should look at very seriously.
Is there a race here for these states run by a Democratic governor, let's say Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, others, to race to get it certified before the courts get involved? Can that happen?
Of course, and that's what you're seeing in Michigan with this pressure that is just so incredibly just outrageous and disgusting, that you have these two Board of Canvasser members who are saying, wait a second, if 71% of precincts in Wayne County have a different count of ballots than what is actually in their voter totals of the people who turned out, and there are those discrepancies, clearly they can't certify those results. And so they voted not to certify. Then you had 2 hours of insane, immense pressure. Then they said, okay, we'll do this under duress. Then they came out and said in sworn affidavits that there was pressure and bullying and intimidation and harassment. And so they said, no, we didn't actually vote to certify this. But what happened is that their signature apparently was stamped onto the certification. And now the Secretary of State, who's a Democrat operative, is just saying, oh, we're going to push this through. And that's what, of course, Democrats are trying to push to rush the certification process. We cannot let this happen. Every American has to be concerned about the integrity of our elections.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing on behalf of the president and really the American people. Coming up a little later in the show, two of your teammates are going to be on the program. Joe DeGeneva, Victoria Tunsing will be here. You get back to work. We appreciate you, Jenna. Thank you, as always.
Thanks so much for covering this, Grant. We really, really appreciate that. This is why the American people are tuning into your show, because they know that you cover the truth and the facts. So thank you.
Well, that's what it's all about. We just want the facts, Jenna, just like everybody else out there. Normal, common sense people. Facts. Jenna, thank you.